How's it going, Guardians? Shifty here, and today I'm back with another solo flawless run of the Pit of Heresy Dungeon. So far this season I've already done solo flawless commentary runs on a Warlock and a Titan. That means today I'm back on a Hunter. For those of you who don't know, there are 2 triumphs associated with this dungeon that are required for the Harbinger title. One of them requires you to complete the Pit of Heresy without dying, and the other one requires you to complete it solo. Doing a solo flawless run will complete both of these triumphs. And in addition to that, if you do get a solo flawless completion, you will get the Crimson Echoes emblem. And if you do manage to do a solo flawless Pit of Heresy, you'll manage to get your hands on the Crimson Echoes emblem, which you can see right here. Alright, so for my subclass choice in this run, I went with Top Tree Night Stalker for the majority of the run, and I paired that with Wormhusk Crown. When I get to the final boss fight, I will be swapping to Bottom Tree Gunslinger and changing Wormhusk Crown out for Celestial Nighthawk. Then my weapon selection will be the same throughout the entire run. I have the Chroma Rush auto rifle in my kinetic slot, then I'm using Telesto in my energy slot, and finally I have the Threaded Needle linear fusion rifle, and I do have Vorpal weapon and boss spec on this. And as for my armor mods, I'll quickly show you each piece of armor, and if you need to see anything in more detail, just pause the video. I do want to mention for my chest armor, I do have a Void piece of armor with Void damage resistance and melee damage resistance. I will be swapping to that for the Invincible Ogres section. And that is all there is to my loadout for this one. I will be including commentary with this run, and there will be timestamps if you want to skip to a particular part. Now, let's jump into it. Alright, so right here at the beginning of the dungeon, we're going to have a couple of minutes before we get to the actual first encounter. We're going to have a lot of jumping down involved here. So in terms of solo flawless runs of this dungeon, I actually think it's kind of the hardest on Hunters. The reason I say that is because the options for healing are kind of limited on a Hunter. That's why I'm using Wormhusk Crown. On a Warlock you have Rifts and Wells and things like Devour. On my Titan run I used Bottom Tree Sunbreaker, so I got heals on ability kills. Alright, so at the beginning of this encounter, I like to come over to the tower here with the pointed up symbol at it. Here's where I'm going to get my first Hive Sword and look at my symbols. These 3 symbols dictate which towers I have to go to. At each of those towers there's going to be a mini boss that I have to take out. That's basically the gist of this first encounter. However, in order to take out those 3 mini bosses, I need this Hive Sword that I'm carrying. Each of those mini-bosses can only be defeated with a particular attack from this sword. Also, I know this area well enough to know where to go. If you don't, I would recommend pulling up a map. Having a map up during this encounter will help guide you to the towers that you need to go to. So now I'm at the first tower where I need to take out a mini-boss at. In order to open the doorway into the tower, I have to take out this Pit Keeper. When I do so, the barrier will go down, and here I have the Shrieker mini-boss. In order to defeat the Shrieker mini-boss, you have to do the guard attack on the sword and reflect the shots back. For whatever reason, I'm not actually getting the shots reflected back accurately here, and I attracted the ogre's attention. I'm going to go ahead and take these ogres out, and now I'm going to try again. And just like that, the first mini-boss is down. Now if you have enough sword ammo, you can always proceed to the next mini-boss without getting another sword. Unfortunately, I lost my sword here, so I have no choice but to get a new sword. What I'm going to do here is take out the enemies on this bridge. Hopefully, I'll be able to get a sword knight to spawn here. So, Telesto is great for taking out groups of enemies. The explosive damage is nice. I also just so happen to take the pit keeper out here for my next tower while clearing the area out. Now there's a couple things you should know. You can find another sword knight in any tower with a symbol that doesn't match one of your 3 symbols. Also, they do end up spawning on these bridges every once in a while. That's what I'm hoping for here. And it looks like we got a sword knight spawn, which is perfect. And now I can head into this tower here and take out my second mini boss. Looks like we have the melee knight. Looks like we have the melee knight here, and in order to take out the melee knight, you can only use light attacks, or I guess you could use the super on the sword as well. You can always use the sword block so you don't receive any damage either, and then do some light attacks or the super. Alright, the second mini-boss is down, and by process of elimination, I know that the third mini-boss is going to be the wizard, which is probably my least favorite. Might as well go ahead and grab another sword while I'm here. And my third tower is right over here. Of course, I have to go for the pit keeper again. If you don't want to waste sword ammo, you can always drop it and take these enemies out with other weapons. However, you do need to know that the sword ammo will go away while it's sitting on the ground. As I mentioned here, we have the wizard mini-boss, and it's going to be accompanied by 2 solar shielded wizards. I like to take those out immediately. And now to fight this wizard, the yellow bar wizard, you have to use the heavy attack for the sword, which is the projectile attack. I'm kind of low on ammo here, so I have to be careful. The super of the sword does not take any energy, so I'm going to have to use that quite a bit to finish off this boss. As you can see, I only have 9 ammo left. Heavy attacks take 3 ammo each, so I can only do 2 more, and then I'm going to have to wait for my next super. If I were to do another heavy attack here, my sword would disappear and I wouldn't finish off this mini-boss. So I'm going to get in position here to use my super. I'm going to rotate around this pillar, and when my super's up, I'm going to go for it. And that was just enough to take it out. If it wasn't, I probably could have used 1 more heavy attack. Either way, when all 3 mini-bosses are down, you want to head to the tower with the green light shooting out of the top of it, as you can see ahead. There's going to be 1 more pit keeper to take out there, and then you can head through the doorway and move on to the next encounter. And the pit keeper is down, so we can go ahead and go through the doorway. So I did say that this is probably the hardest to solo flawless on a hunter, but the invisibility is invaluable at certain parts. Alright, the Hunter invisibility is actually incredibly useful at this part where there's the Invincible Ogres. For my Titan and Warlock run, I simply try to jump past the Ogres, and it does work, but it's pretty risky. So what I like to do is try to take out the Knight in these rooms right away to get the Void Charge. I'm going to go ahead and break that so I can slide right out here. There's that Ogre. I'm going to go invisible to avoid it. It's just the easiest route. There's going to be 3 doorways in this encounter. Again, you might want to pull up a map for this. There's a left pathway, a middle pathway, and a right pathway. Each one has a door at the end with a receptacle where you can put the Void Charge. You have to put a Void Charge in each one of these places, and then you'll be able to go through the doorways. So I've already done one. Now I have to go to a different room and find another Knight to take out in order to get a Void Charge. If you follow the path that I take on screen, you'll be able to easily complete this section. Again, if you're new to this dungeon, I highly recommend pulling up a map. As you can see, again, I use invisibility to avoid an ogre. I could wait here for my invisibility, but I'm going to get impatient and move right past it. I kind of zigzag there to avoid the attacks. Gotta find one more Knight in this room. There it is. This Void Charge dunking is going to persist into the next encounter as well. The Chamber of Suffering requires 6 Void Charges to be dunked. So I just realized I would normally have swapped to a Void Chest Armor piece with Void Damage Resistance, but I forgot to do that here. Also, I am going to max out my mobility because I think having my dodge up is going to be incredibly important for the Chamber of Suffering. So I do have tier 9 mobility, which is going to be good enough. I'm going to go ahead and place a rally banner, and then to start the encounter, I'm going to fight these acolytes here. So Telesto is an excellent weapon for this encounter because it kind of acts like a trap in certain instances. It has no damage fall off really, and it has awesome AoE. So for this section there's going to be Knights. Some of them will spawn to the left, to the right, and in the middle area from where you came from. When you take them out, you can dunk the Void Charge like that, and you have to do that 6 times to move on. Now, during this encounter you do have to stand on this plate. Otherwise, you will be wiped by the totem. When you're on this plate, you're going to gain stacks of Curse of Suffering, which will make it so you take more damage from enemies, making this section harder. You can clear those Curse of Suffering stacks by taking out those Knights and dunking charges. Every time you dunk a Void Charge, you're going to reduce the stacks of Curse of Suffering. So here I'm going to be utilizing my dodge to go invisible and to heal. Generally, if you see a ton of ads spawning, you want to clear them out before going for the next Knight. And I do want to mention when I get to the last 2 Void Charges, I like to do them back to back. It helps me avoid an entire phase of ad spawn. So I mostly cleared the area out here. I'm going to go for this second Knight. You can see there, it dropped another Void Charge for me. I'm going to make my way back to the plate and totem. And you can always see your progress here by looking around the doorway behind you. There's rune symbols around the doorway. Every time you dunk a Void Charge, one of those rune symbols will go away. You start with 6 back there. Once you get down to 0, you're done with the encounter. You can see here Telesto also makes an excellent weapon for taking out the Knights. I did forget to mention that every time you dunk a void charge, you're going to have 2 knights that spawn up top, and you're going to have a wave of thrall. You can really see how during this encounter, solar damage resistance, concussive dampener, protective light, and my invisibility come in handy. So here is my 3rd void charge. I placed a tether there to be ready for this thrall spawn. Gonna go ahead and use Telesto on the knights. Sometimes this rightmost knight will teleport off to the left. Grab this Void Elemental Well to become charged with light again. Always be careful for acolytes behind you as well. So here I'm going to go ahead and grab my 4th Void Charge. The next time I decide to go for a Void Charge, I'm going to do them back to back. Or at least try to. Unfortunately, I am a bit low on Telesto ammo here. Alright, the 2 knights are down, which is great. I am almost dead here. And Worm Husk and Invisibility come in clutch there again. Looks like we got another Acolyte spawn. I believe the Acolyte spawns occur at various intervals. Another close call. So if you haven't noticed, you can step off the plate for brief amounts of time. If you do step off it long enough, the totem will activate and it will wipe you out. So this is my 5th Void Charge dunked. I already took this knight out over to the left, so I'm going to head directly for that Void Charge and make my way back to the receptacle. You can see the totem start to activate there. This should finish the encounter. In this next section, we're going to have to take out 3 solar shielded wizards that are found throughout kind of a maze-like area. To determine their locations, there is a method. There are going to be some rune symbols that show up at the bottom of this drop-down section here. You can look at those and pull up a map for this section as well. Most of the time I just wing it. I don't really have the rune symbols memorized and their locations, so I kind of just run around the area looking for red on my radar. So if you did drop down there and you wanted to take a look at the runes, make sure you pull up a map and follow that. Like I said, I just kind of wing it. I run around the area until I see red on my radar, and I take the wizards out that way. It may be a little bit faster to have a map available, but I've been doing it this way for quite some time. So as I saw here, there's going to be a wizard around to my right. I saw red on my radar. I automatically knew there was going to be a wizard here. My method also works pretty well if you know the area well already. If you're new to this dungeon, I recommend looking at those runes and using a map. I can see acolytes right in front of me. That guarantees there's going to be a wizard on the tower just to the right of them. And just like I said, there's a wizard there. And that means I have one more wizard left to take out before I can move on. This section is going to test your ability to avoid traps and to jump. So I'm not seeing any red on my radar around here. I see a little bit now. That means I'm going to have to go back out and around to the left. There's no easy way to get over to that red spot from the area I'm currently at. Like I said, I had to come back out, and now I'm heading off to the left here. It's unfortunate that I got this particular wizard spawn. It's a little far away from the other two. Does end up slowing this area down a little bit. Even if I did look at a map, it would have been a bit slower than usual. Either way, I did take out that third wizard, so we're done with this encounter as long as I can make it to the end without dying. Now that we've entered the Cradle of Damnation, we're approaching the final boss fight. This boss fight is going to utilize several mechanics we learned earlier. We're going to be taking out 3 of the same mini-bosses from the first encounter, and we're going to be dunking void charges. And as I already mentioned before, I'm swapping to Celestial Nighthawk here. Make sure I have the same mods on, and I'm also going to be swapping to Bottom Tree Gunslinger. I am doing some mod switching here if you want to do something similar. I'm just kind of looking at my stats and seeing what I want to do. I'm basically trying to get to tier 10 recovery. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and use a rally banner here. Just like that first encounter, in order to take out the mini bosses, we're going to need a Hive Sword. Each of the 3 towers around the area is going to contain one of the 3 mini-bosses from earlier. Once you defeat one of these mini-bosses, it will drop a void charge. In order to do boss DPS, you're going to have to dunk all 3 of those void charges. So I usually start with this tower off to the right that contains the wizard, mainly because I find the wizard to be the most annoying of the 3 mini-bosses. Each mini-boss is going to have some acolytes around it as well, so you're going to have to be careful for that. Before I grab the void charge, I'm going to go ahead and clear out some of the adds in the middle area surrounding the boss here. I'm going to go ahead and grab the void charge, and there's a receptacle in front of each tower. However, I like to rotate clockwise one tower and then dunk it. This makes it so you don't have to dunk the void charge right next to the boss after you take out the final mini-boss. I'm going to go ahead and grab a second sword here and head to the left tower where we're going to have the melee sword knight. Again, there's going to be some acolytes up here, so be careful for that. My goal here is going to be to try to two-phase this fight. However, if you want to take it slower, you can always do that. This particular dungeon is always about balance. You can either take things slow and meticulous, or you can try to rush things, but it does get a little bit riskier. So I did get that void charge, but I had some sword ammo left, so I decided to send some heavy attacks on over to the third tower to try to clear out some acolytes if I can. Now that that's done, I'm going to grab the void charge and head clockwise one tower and then dunk this void charge. You do have to dunk one void charge in each receptacle. You can't dunk them in the same ones. And after each void charge is placed, you're going to get a few thrall that spawn, not too many. Also, be careful for the boss. Alright, I picked up a sword that didn't have much ammo. I have to find a sword knight. I think it's left over here. And this will allow me to take out the third and final mini-boss. And I'm going to try to clear out some acolytes up here. Looks like I took a few of them out earlier with that other sword. Since you are blocking with this sword, you can go ahead and take out the mini-boss and then worry about the acolytes generally, unless they come around your flank. So it looks like I'm going to kind of have to dunk by the boss anyway, which is unfortunate. What I'm going to do is dunk and then immediately turn around and run the opposite direction, because I don't want to stay in that flame attack. Immediately I'm going to go ahead and use Golden Gun. That'll take a decent chunk of its health away. You always want to use a crystal in the middle to try to block some attacks, and you want to avoid the cursed thrall that spawn after a while. And when he does the slam, you have to be careful. You only have a few seconds to get out. If you're in there when the explosion goes off, you will die. And I forgot to mention, you can only do damage to the boss if you're in that green circle in the middle there. So I do want to get a two-phase, but I didn't quite get half of the boss's health. So we're going to have to see how this next phase goes. Before I head into the next boss phase, I am going to swap high energy fire on so I can maybe utilize charged with light to do a bit more weapon damage. Take out the acolytes here. I also didn't have boss damage spec there on my linear fusion rifle. Also, to enter each boss damage phase, you have to do the same things. You have to take out the 3 mini-bosses and dunk 3 void charges. You can repeat this as many times as you want, so you can take this nice and slow if you want to. So don't fret if you can't 2-phase it. Don't even worry about it if you can't 3-phase it. You have plenty of time to work with. And got the sword knight chasing me. Went ahead and used the sword super quick. Took a nice chunk of its health away. And we got our second void charge here. This time I didn't use my heavy sword ammo for the acolytes over by the Shrieker boss. Try to get an elemental well there. And I'm going to quickly swap over to high energy fire here. So elemental armaments isn't doing me a lot of good anyway, so I'm going to swap to high energy fire there. Now, as long as I don't lose my charges of light, I will be able to take advantage of that during the boss damage phase. Since the acolytes aren't coming out, I'll go ahead and take the Shrieker out. Alright, so I do have charges of light. I have the void charge, and I'm heading to dunk it. Void charge is dunked. I got hit by a knight, and unfortunately protective light activated, so I will not be able to take advantage of high energy fire. That's going to make this a pretty close call. Boss spec should help out a little bit, but it may not be enough still. I have to be careful for the Cursed Thrall here. I'll run away from them quick. Run away from the fire attack, which can be extremely dangerous. Still have some Cursed Thrall on me there. I am running out of time here. Yep, so it did slam attack. And I'm going to risk it. And we barely got it. It was about to explode. Either way, I did get the 2-phase. Remember, you don't have to do that. You can take as many damage phases as you want. Anyway, that is a solo flawless run of the Pit of Heresy Dungeon on a Hunter. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe. I just want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.